oh my goodness, Avengers Infinity War was incredible. I loved it.
Hope you like spoilers, kids.
Welcome back to the second draft.
Going into the movie, all I was expecting was a bunch of really cool moments with all the characters getting together and just kind of being blown away by the spectacle of it. I was not expecting, and I was completely taken aback by how succinct and well written the story was, and how many really strong emotional beats were there, along with the humor and the really cool moments. The Russo brothers had not just somehow took the amalgam of the last 10 years of Marvel movies and put them all into a really good movie really well. They also made a really damn good movie in their own right. I'm still kind of in awe of what they were able to achieve with this movie.
I mean, it's good. They have the benefit of cutting the story off wherever they wanted to.
Right.
They could have cut it off way earlier, way later, and everybody still would have been fine with it because they have that liberty. The studio's not going to give them a hard time.
Right.
The screenwriters knew what they were doing. The Russo brothers knew what they were doing. Now, I was told this movie was a straight up and down popcorn flick, and it was. I was not disappointed when I went into the theater and I was told that, because that was my expectation.
Sure.
Instead, I was impressed because I went in expecting just popcorn flick, and I got a little bit more depth than that, and I got more character development and great humor and just beats that hit the nail on the head.
It's fitting because it should have happened. We got what is without a doubt the best Marvel villain to date, and thank goodness they got it right with Thanos.
The entire time I knew him, he only ever had one goal: to wipe out half the universe. If he gets all the Infinity Stones, he can do it with the snap of his fingers. Just like that.
Tell me his name again.
Thanos.
I think that's the thing I was most impressed with. All said and done. I mean, it was really cool to see all the heroes interact and all the really cool bombastic battles and whatnot. But the fact that they not only created a really strong villain that was a threat, he was also an emotional and even almost sympathetic character. Like, he had layers to him. He was almost a tragic figure in both, his past, his actions, and the fact that he was so just effed up, but he really strongly believed he was right at the same time. Many layers, many layers to that character, and I'm just super, super impressed. And full credit to Josh Brolin for doing a mocap performance, but just knocking out of the park.
Yeah, it's really tough to take a villain character and give the nuance to make them a little bit more relatable. And especially more difficult to do that when your character is basically committing genocide.
Over and over
again, right? And I think the screenwriters do a good job to find the moments that humanize that character, despite the atrocious things that he does. I mean, he's still a villain. He's still a despicable, scum of the universe.
Literally, yeah.
But at the same time, there are moments where you're understanding, relationships with Gamora and things like that. So
yeah, and that was the thing that really stuck with me was, again, this is heavily spoilerish, so if you haven't seen the movie, don't blame you because it's been sold out everywhere for the past week. Just don't watch this video. Just give it a week. We're more than happy seeing the hit count jump up in a week when everybody comes back to watch this. But Thanos' relationship with Gamora was kind of hinted at in the previous Guardians of the Galaxy movie. We really got the idea that Gamora was like the favored of the two between her and Nebula, and we kind of got the idea that Thanos favored Gamora and really just either didn't care for Nebula or just treated her poorly to make her even more of an angry assassin weapon. But this movie took it in a whole different level, whole different direction, and I was actually kind of shocked at how profound it was and how effective it was. There's a very pivotal scene where we realize that the one thing that Thanos actually cares about and loves in the entire universe is Gamora, and up to this point we thought she was just being trained her whole life to be an assassin, and it turns out that Thanos, who is, made a reputation of himself as being just completely soulless and genocidal maniac, actually kind of developed, paternal feelings for this girl and actually cared about her, and he had to sacrifice her to fulfill what he thought was his destiny and his ultimate goal of, making the universe a better place. And it was incredibly tragic. It was incredibly moving. And I didn't expect that moment out of what I thought this character was going to be and what I thought this movie was going to be. So
yeah, I think Thanos in that moment is very operative because he acts as the foil to what we traditionally know as like our standard rebel.
Right.
You see rebel characters in many movies function in the way that they sacrifice. Eventually, they sacrifice the cause for their loved one or the thing that they care about on more of an immediate level. They favor the short term rather than the long term, and then the hard question is they're very much that question.
Yeah.
Thanos in this has to either take his movement and progress in his cause, or more of a validation of what he's been feeling this entire time. And he opts for the cause, which is the foil to the kind of standard rebel character that we normally see.
And again, I love that scene because if Thanos had known what the price for the Soul Stone was going to be, Gamora, the one person he actually legitimately cares about, he would have hardened his heart to it and ultimately would have failed. But the shock of the price being having to sacrifice a soul to receive the Soul Stone, and it had to be somebody he actually cared about, I guess is a deterrent for anybody who actually thought about trying to get at the Soul Stone. It was a really moving scene because that was Thanos' one weakness, I guess you could say. And he very begrudgingly and very sadly and emotionally, for him, made that sacrifice. And sacrificed a great character in the movie as well. So, amazingly well-written scene. The character arc for Thanos, of all characters, again, I'm just wholly impressed with what was achieved here. So.
Yeah, and kudos to the story writers as well for picking the Soul Stone to be, kind of later on as opposed to like the first Infinity Stone that Thanos goes after.
Right.
So and there might be a little bit more backstory in the comics that I'm not necessarily familiar with, but he needed to have the Reality Stone beforehand in order to manipulate everything and set up his capture of Gamora in order to kind of get to that point.
Right.
So it all kind of like stacks on one another.
Yeah. What
I'm most impressed with storytelling wise though is the fact that it's really a lot easier to take a longer story and split it into a 3-act structure, and many trilogies do that. That's why we see so many trilogies, because you have a 1 act as your first movie, second movie, second act, third movie, third act, but then they all act as a single story altogether. Imagine Star Wars or something like that. This movie is splitting into 2, and that's a little bit more difficult. You end a movie on a cliffhanger, and I thought the ending was fantastic. Shocking to me, because I fortunately hadn't been spoiled, but to find the proper beats and then end it on such a wild note like that was really impressive to me. It's definitely one of those weird, memorable movie experiences that I probably won't forget.
Yeah, and we may as well talk about that last scene because it's become a little bit of a controversy. That wasn't for us. I mean, it was a really sad, emotional series of scenes watching all those heroes fade away and seeing everybody react to that. That's for the heroes. That's to set them up for how they're going to get out of this. So we know they're going to come back. And it's stupid to get emotional, get pissed off about the movie ending on such a downer note, because it's just a catalyst for the heroes picking themselves up by their bootstraps and figuring out a way to win. So don't think about it as like a sad or angering movie because you just watch all the heroes die, because it's temporary. Just think about them as being knocked out or locked away or something, just for a short span of time.
Think about it like you would a sports movie, but this is part 1 of that sports movie. You got part 2.
Yeah.
Now what happens now is your heroes get kicked in the teeth. They have a little bit of an existential crisis. They come back to zero. They find their mentor, and then they do a training montage, and then they come back to kick the bad guy's ass.
Right.
And that's kind of how it will work out. Except I don't think they'll have a mentor, and I don't think they'll have a training montage.
I would like to see a training montage.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet.
I want to see Thor standing on a beach swinging around Stormbreaker.
Just
practicing.
The waves.
That last scene, I love it, not only because I think it was very effective, but because of the way it was executed as well. It was something they could have very quickly gone to as soon as Thanos got all the Infinity Stones. They delayed it for a little while, so you actually you kind of saw it coming, but at the same time you were blindsided by it, and you were also blindsided about the severity of it, like how many characters were actually just turned to ash and dust, one after another. There was a few that were pretty brutal to watch on camera.
Yeah.
This is definitely not a movie for young kids. I imagine there's probably a lot of upset parents, a lot of upset kids who, spoiler alert again, please don't watch this.
What happened to Spider-Man?
Exactly, Spider-Man just got dusted. Black Panther, who was just in one of the most wildly successful movies of the year so far, and one of the most successful Marvel movies to date. He got turned to dust.
Yeah, and his was pretty dramatic. I would say I think those two are the ones that kind of stick out because, Tom Holland had a full-on death scene.
Yeah.
And
it's his second go as Spider-Man.
Yeah. It was that's bizarre. Like, both of those were pretty. I don't know. They're pretty traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. At the end scene, that final scene with Thanos, it's weird because usually we get some sort of payoff in a superhero movie.
Right.
You see your superheroes fail, but then there wasn't an and then in this movie.
Yeah.
You see Thanos, and he's kind of struggling.
Right.
He sits down and he sees this like beautiful sunset, and you'd expect to see some sort of contented smile on his face as the villain, as the manipulative villain that he supposedly is, but you don't see that, which testament again to Josh Brolin, but and
it's
the direction of this movie.
Thanos is a character that carries a lot of weight on his shoulders. He's not just I'm just gonna wipe out all of humanity or take over the world or rule the universe. Like he's kind of like the main villain in Watchmen in a lot of ways. The comic book, the movie was terrible. But Veidt in the comic, he was somebody who decided that in order to make the world a better place, he was going to create a terrible, horrible, cataclysmic event which would kill thousands upon thousands of people in order to bring the world together to stop the Cold War, the inevitability or what they thought was the inevitability of nuclear holocaust. Thanos is also on the same boat wherein he is literally wiping out half the population of every planet he comes across in his ultimate goal to get all the Infinity Stones so that he'll have the ability to wipe out half the population of the universe. Because when he was younger, on his planet Titan, he saw the resources dwindling, he saw people starving, and he saw the planet on the brink, and he suggested that what they should do there is wipe out half of Titan's population so the other half of the population could thrive.
Get rid of the disparity.
And people called him a madman, which was also a really cool nod to the fact that his nickname in the comics is the Mad Titan. So now he's the madman from Titan, which was cool. So he took the principle that he wanted to enact on Titan to try and save half the population because nobody listened to him. They thought he was crazy, and Titan was just decimated and just destroyed as a result. It was a wasteland at the end of the film. He wants to apply that to the rest of the universe because he doesn't want to see that same shit happen to every other planet. So he thinks he's doing something good. He knows it's terrible, and it's awful, and it's death, and it's genocide. And he carries that weight on his shoulders, but he also very firmly believes that what he's doing is for the ultimate good of everybody. And that's damn tragic and really just out of left field storytelling for a comic book movie. Like, yeah.
So character-wise, too, like if we're going to talk about Thanos so much, I mean, when I went into this movie, I thought for certain I'm going to see the death of one of the Avengers, which I guess I did. However, I thought it was going to be one of three that survived. We saw Thor, Iron Man. I mean, Tony arguably almost bit the dust, but Cap was pretty much fine the whole time, and I thought he was the for certain adios, you're gone.
I'm still not convinced one of those two aren't going to go out at the end of the next movie.
I've heard some people speculate that all three are going to sort of sacrifice themselves for the kind of resurrection, as it were, of the other Avengers.
Right. But Tony and Steve still need to reconcile and be buddies again, so that whichever of them survives, if one of the other survives, we have to see them feel that loss, because that would be just a horribly, incredibly dramatic moment that I don't think the filmmakers want to rob, the story or the audience of. Despite how sad it's going to be to see one of those characters die, it's also going to be a very heroic death and probably a very necessary death in order to kind of shepherded the next wave of the Marvel movies, which of course is Black Panther, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, which was hinted at in Infinity War and so forth. So
yeah, if I'm going to do my hot take, I think Cap goes and Iron Man and Thor stay.
I think Iron Man retires though for good.
Yeah, Iron Man retires. He's got to go, be a husband to Pepper, and then Thor. We learned at the beginning of this movie, he's got to rebuild the Asgardian race. So
yeah, that was kind of ambiguous too. At the very beginning of the movie, we see the ship that he and Loki were on heading back to Earth after Ragnarok. Very first scene of this movie is it's completely obliterated by Thanos, and there was a very quick line that says that half the people on the ship were destroyed. So I'm hoping like Valkyrie and Korg are still out there doing something. And
they're floating in space.
Something. I hope those characters aren't gone,
because
that would just be such a weird I mean, this movie was very much a downer in a lot of ways, but it would be weird just to have such an attachment to those characters from Ragnarok and then just like dying off screen before the next movie even begins. That's a little too cruel. But
I think the next movie they're gonna just really quickly tee up Cap and Iron Man's kind of reconciliation, and it'll all resolve itself in the first 15 minutes, I think. And they're gonna jump right into it, and then it's gonna be buddy for the rest of the movie until Cap bites it. Sorry, that's pretty blunt, but
no, I think you're. I think
how
you're
we do it.
Pretty much on the line. Yeah. Just other thoughts.
Character-wise, I don't want to cut you off, but
sure.
While we're still on characters,
Mm-hmm.
my favorite villain character apart from Thanos was his like telekinetic. I don't even know his name. Telekinetic villain compatriot.
Oh my Squidward.
Squidward.
Yeah,
my gosh, such a cool villain character. I've been waiting for like somebody that kind of like stacked up. They all sort of had their equals. In terms of, counterparts that were villains. You had kind of Children of Thanos, like Dark Avengers status.
Kinda, yeah.
But this guy was like one of the cooler villain characters, I think, because you could tell that he was kind of a peon, but at the same time was really powerful. And I don't know, they had a lot of fun with it. And I think his I'm assuming death scene was like really entertaining and funny and still cool. Yeah. You ever seen that really old movie, Aliens? Oh man, so good.
That was really great. Yeah, a really cool little quick thing for the Iron Man or the Iron Spider suit too. I was not expecting that. I went into this movie completely spoiler free. So the only thing I knew of that I knew about was the stuff from the trailer. So I actually didn't really have any trouble avoiding spoilers, believe it or not. I made a mad dash to see the movie on Friday because as soon as it came out Thursday night, people were just all over the internet trying to ruin it for everybody. I think it's going to take some really strong due diligence to avoid any spoilers for the next one, because I think like everybody and their brother is going to be out there trying to ruin this shit for everybody. Other characters, I'm super impressed with how they balanced all the different storylines, and all the storylines felt vital and important. There was a bunch of what I felt like were A-plots. Like there wasn't anything that felt like, oh, here's these characters again. Can't wait to get back to Thor and Rocket. I mean, everything felt important, and everything drove the story forward, and every single arc with all the different mismatches of all the characters had some really great moments for all those characters too. So nothing ever felt boring. I mean, the movie was almost 3 hours long, but it didn't feel like it, unlike Ready Player One, which was 2 hours long and felt like about 4 hours long. But I can't say enough good things about Infinity War.
The benefit I think that they had was that they had 3 or 4 or 5 different movies with these big A plots that you mentioned, and they all very very subtly teased what was going to happen next, right? And you knew how they were sort of going to interact, but you didn't know which minor characters were going to jump into the other A plot storyline,
which is really cool.
And I think what they did, that was the thing that was most impressive to me, is that they took Black Panther, they took Thor, they took Captain America, they took Iron Man, and then they just basically switched all. And Doctor Strange, I think I don't know why I haven't mentioned Doctor Strange yet, or why we haven't talked about him yet.
Yeah,
very focal point of Infinity Wars. They took all these minor characters and they switched them around, and I think what they did really well was figure out what is a good awkward scene for all of these characters to be in. One of the quintessential kind of storytelling mechanics that you are always trying to do is promote conflict, so that your heroes can kind of triumph over that, and then move on to the next scene. They were causing conflict just by throwing different people in the same room,
which is brilliant.
And it is, yeah. What happens when you throw a bunch of egomaniacs in the same room with a kid? Then it's not a bunch. It was that villain we just mentioned, telekinesis guy that Squidward, I forget his actual name. Doctor Strange, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. That's hilarious. It was this weird, like in the middle of the movie, right after the inciting incident, but not quite plot point one, like awkward scene, and it should have been kind of a boring stepping stone into the next kind of sequence. but it wasn't. I thought it was hilarious. I loved every
Yeah.
second of
I
it.
think
So
it was very succinct and just razor sharp. I honestly, I can't wait for this movie to come out on Blu-ray just because I want to see the behind the scenes, the discussions, and I almost guarantee you they had a giant whiteboard drawn up.
Oh, yeah.
All right, this character's gonna hang out with this character, and they're gonna do this, and this character's gonna hang out with this character. We gotta figure out how to make that happen because you could tell they knew. Like the recipe for this movie, they knew exactly where every ingredient was going to go. There was nothing was like, well, why don't we put Rocket and Thor together? No, there was a very direct and very purposeful reason for why those two characters got together, and they were perfect together.
And because the I don't know, the simpler or cheaper way to do that would be like stack Thor against Drax because they're
Sure.
two macho guys and they're gonna end up fighting and saying stuff in front of each other or whatever. But no, like we've learned a little bit more about Thor in the last movie. He's a little bit more tender-hearted than that. He's constantly next to the Hulk. He's not going to be at all intimidated by Drax. Like, let's put him next to the raccoon and just like throw some hilarious jokes out.
Yeah.
And I thought I looked forward to those scenes because
Man.
the whole Thor and Rocket scenes were hilarious the whole movie through. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can go on and on.
So,
We can
okay.
literally talk about this movie for twice as long as the movie ran for. So there's just so much here. The whole thing is just so almost effortlessly clever. It's just so great and funny without being overbearing with the humor. And it's also tragic and sad. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I teared up a few times, not just at sad parts, but also just seeing 10 years worth of all these characters getting together and having these amazingly cool moments together. It was just really, really cool.
There are very few slow moments in the movie. There are a couple, and you need to have those. You need to have the lulls so that the peaks really stand out, right? Like you need to have some valleys. But all of those just like they seem to last like 2 seconds. And they're necessary. You need to have the scene where Star-Lord is talking to Gamora, and there's another point to talk about, the fact that Peter Quill is a scene stealer, and he really took a sort of a back seat in this movie. But they needed to have that scene that was a little bit slow. They needed to have some scenes with Scarlet Witch and Vision that were a little bit slow because that was a little bit of an emotional linchpin in the movie.
Yeah.
And they needed to have that payoff later on when Thanos reverses time and whatnot. But I mean, other than those, I'm kind of like racking my brain for some slow scenes, and nothing's really standing out because it's a popcorn flick that just like nailed it on every beat.
Yeah.
You know, it had emotional depth, but did not keep you guessing for too long. And if it did, it was because it had a better payoff planned out later on.
Right. Yeah, like I said before, I kind of compared the movie to being like a meal being prepared by chefs. And they knew exactly how much salt to add, how much sugar to add, how much beef to add. Like, the whole thing just came out. I mean, and it sounds like a weird analogy now that I'm saying it out loud, but really, they knew exactly where to sprinkle in every ingredient to keep the entire thing balanced and palatable and satisfying ultimately.
And
So
memorable.
yeah, holy crap, yeah.
Definitely memorable. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the second course.
I can't
stoked.
wait. I'm so glad they filmed both of these together, and it's only going to be a year until the next one comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.